The sky is getting crowded, and the world's biggest airports have officially run out of parking spots for small jets. The Airbus A380 was supposed to fix this, but it hasn't. So, what's next for the future of aviation? Here are the wild new plans to replace the giant of the sky: the tarmac Tetris apocalypse. If you think your local mall parking lot is a nightmare during the holidays, you clearly haven't seen the flight schedule at London Heathrow. Major global hubs have officially hit a wall where they physically cannot fit another aircraft into the sky or onto the runway during peak hours. Heathrow is basically operating at full capacity, with around 80 slots per hour, meaning if you want to fly a new route, someone else has to leave, or you have to buy a slot for tens of millions of dollars. Paris, Charles de Gaulle, and Frankfurt are facing the exact same squeeze, which has turned the aviation industry into a high-stakes game of Tetris, where the only way to win is to bring a bigger block to the table. This is why the dream of the super jumbo refuses to die, even after the manufacturers tried to kill it off. The reality is that global travel demand didn't just bounce back after the pandemic, it absolutely exploded, and now it is living rent-free in the nightmares of airport planners. With major hubs in India and China growing at a record pace, the industry is staring down a massive capacity void as hundreds of older large jets hit their retirement age. We are looking at nearly 1,000 aircraft entering their sunset years in the 2030s, including the workhorse Boeing 777-300ER and the A380 itself. Without a direct successor, airlines are forced into a strategy called upgauging, which is just a fancy way of saying they have to pack more seats into every single departure just to keep the system from collapsing. It is not about luxury or prestige anymore, it is about the cold, hard math of moving 500 people at once because you only have one landing slot to do it. The €20 billion fantasy. Tim Clark, the president of Emirates, is basically the final boss of A380 fans, and he is currently cooking up a plan that sounds like an absolute heist of Airbus engineering. He has been aggressively pitching a modernized A380neo that would feature massive composite wings, a slimmer tail, and next-generation Rolls-Royce engines to cut fuel consumption by a staggering 25%. In his mind, this would be the ultimate tool to dominate the slot-constrained hubs of the world for the next 30 years. He still has the blueprints in front of the Airbus board, but their response has been the ultimate reality check for the industry. They essentially told him they would build it, but only if he handed over €20 billion upfront to cover the development costs, because they are not interested in subsidizing a niche giant for a single customer. The problem is that Airbus has already moved on, and they are busy glazing their A321neo production lines, which are printing money like a central bank. To bring back the A380 in a composite form, they would have to rebuild the entire supply chain and certification process from scratch, which is a financial mountain no one wants to climb. It is a legendary standoff, where the world's most powerful airline boss wants a revolution and the manufacturer is playing it safe with twin-engine jets that are easier to sell to the masses. While the A380neo is technically a masterpiece on paper, it is effectively dead in the water because no other airline is willing to gamble their entire balance sheet on a four-engine behemoth. It is a beautiful dream that is being crushed by the weight of corporate pragmatism and the undeniable efficiency of two engines over four, the longest twin-jet heist. Boeing is looking at the capacity gap and thinking they have the perfect answer in the form of the 777-10, which would be the undisputed king of the twins. This would be a massive stretch of the upcoming 777-9, designed to carry up to 500 passengers in a high-density layout that would make an original jumbo jet look small. Emirates is so invested in this idea that they actually ordered 65 more 777-9s just to keep Boeing interested in studying the even larger version. The engineering path seems straightforward, but when you stretch a twin jet to these lengths, you start breaking the physics engine of standard aviation. You end up with a plane so long that tail strike margins become a legitimate, terrifying concern every time the pilot rotates for takeoff. The technical challenges are enough to give any engineer a migraine because you have to ensure the plane can still climb safely, even if one of those massive GE9X engines decides to quit at the worst possible moment. You need an insane amount of thrust and control authority to keep a 50-ton airframe in the air with 500 people on board. Boeing is already years late with the base 777X program, and their cash reserves are currently under massive pressure from a series of certification nightmares. They have to certify the MAX 7, the MAX 10, and the entire 777X family before they can even think about launching a stretch that would require its own set of testing. It is a high-risk, high-reward play that would give them total dominance over the high-capacity market if they can actually get it off the ground. The surgical European strike. Actually, Airbus is quietly preparing their own countermove with the A350-2000, which would be a 10-meter stretch of their current flagship widebody. This thing is designed to pack around 450 seats and could potentially enter service much faster than anything Boeing is cooking up because it is based on a platform that is already flying and certified. Multiple airlines are reportedly begging Airbus to launch this version because it would be significantly more efficient than a Boeing alternative on shorter, dense routes. It is a more conservative and calculated approach that focuses on the pure economics of seat costs rather than trying to build the biggest plane possible. Airbus is being very careful though, because they don't want to overreact to a single customer and repeat the expensive lessons they learned with the original A380 program. The strategic goal for the A350-2000 is to act as a direct replacement for the aging 777-300ER fleets that are currently the backbone of global long-haul travel. It would thrive on routes between Europe and the US East Coast, or the massive hub-to-hub corridors in Asia, where high density is the daily reality. However, there is a bit of drama in the engine department because Tim Clark wants more thrust for the intense heat and high-altitude operations in Dubai. This puts Rolls-Royce in a tough spot because developing a semi-new engine variant would slow down the entire certification timeline and balloon the costs. It is a chess match of engineering and ego where everyone is waiting for an anchor customer to drop a massive deposit and force the project into reality. The engine that arrived too late. The real wildcard in the future of big jets is the UltraFan engine currently being tested by Rolls-Royce, which promises a total revolution in power and efficiency. This engine uses a massive fan and a complex gearbox to deliver enormous thrust while burning significantly less fuel than anything currently on the wing. Ground tests have been a massive success, but the engine won't be ready for actual commercial flight until at least 2030, which creates a massive timing problem. By the time this technology is fully matured, the window for a new 4-engine Super Jumbo will likely have slammed shut. It is a classic case of the right technology arriving at the wrong time for the aircraft that could actually make the most of it. If you could stick these engines on an A380 today, you would see a fuel burn improvement that would make the plane viable for almost any airline in the world. But the industry has already shifted its focus to twin jets that can deliver 90% of that capacity at a fraction of the operating cost. The UltraFan will likely end up being the heart of a future twin jet rather than the savior of the Super Jumbo because maintenance departments have officially declared war on 4 engine configurations. It is pure dopamine for aviation nerds to see this level of engineering, but the business reality is that efficiency is the only thing that matters to the board of directors. The engine might be a masterpiece, but it is currently looking for an airframe that is brave enough to take it to the skies. The return of the living dead. A few years ago, everyone was ready to write the obituary for the A380 and the 747. But then something weird happened and the giants started waking up. Lufthansa dragged theirs out of the desert, British Airways reactivated their entire fleet, and Etihad brought the residents back to life. These were cold, hard economic necessities because airlines realized they couldn't move enough people without them. Emirates is currently flying nearly 100 of these things and plans to keep them in the air until the 2040s because there simply isn't anything else on the market that can haul over 500 people in a single go. It is the ultimate survival story for a plane that was supposed to be a relic of the past. These reactivated jumbos are primarily serving the peak trunk routes where slot constraints make it impossible to add more flights. British Airways is running them to Los Angeles and Boston because they literally cannot get another departure slot at Heathrow regardless of how many people want to buy tickets. Lufthansa is using them for high-demand transatlantic runs from Munich, which is also capped at its maximum capacity. It turns out the A380 is a massive win for airlines when the demand is high enough to fill every seat and the airport won't let you land anything else. The plane has earned a second life because the global infrastructure failed to keep up with the travel boom, and now these giants are the only thing keeping the major hubs from total gridlock. The twin-jet succession. The consensus taking shape across the board is that the true successor to the Super Jumbo isn't going to be another double-decker, but a massive single-deck twin jet. We are looking at a future defined by planes with around 500 seats, featuring composite-heavy construction and engines like the GE9X or the next-gen Rolls-Royce variants. These jets will directly replace the 777-300ER and take over the capacity needs that the A380 currently handles while burning 30% less fuel. It is a choice between the prestige of the past and the surgical efficiency of the future, where the wingspan is the only thing that stays giant. Whether one of these actually gets built will decide the fate of long-haul flying for the rest of the century. The total addressable market for these high-capacity twins over the next 2 decades is estimated to be around 300 aircraft, which is just enough to justify the massive development costs. Mega carriers in China and India could swing the entire market if they decide to fully commit to high-capacity hub models as their populations travel more than ever before. While US airlines still prefer the flexibility of smaller jets, the rest of the world is staring at a future where size is the only way to grow.